You've heard me say it before, and I will say it again. Motherhood is a leadership role. Parenting in general is a leadership role. And when we show up as leaders, everyone benefits. Today I'm talking to Elizabeth. She is a business scaling strategist that mentors impact-driven entrepreneurs. She is the mother of 3 amazing humans. She helps go-getters build the businesses that align with their purpose and dreams. She lives on a hobby farm with her husband and, like I said, her children, practicing what she preaches, working consistently to have the freedom to truly live. All right. I'm really excited for you to listen to this conversation. Elizabeth and I have known each other previously from groups and communities that we both have been engaged in. And I always love engaging in conversations with women, especially mothers, who are living a freedom-based lifestyle. I think online gets a really bad rap because everyone is trying to buy you into freedom-based lifestyle, freedom. And, sometimes we're sitting over here in our shit with our fear and our doubts and our worries and our endless to-do list and piles of laundry, and our jobs and our relationships and a pandemic and everything else to go along with it, and oppression and judgment and ridiculousness. So this is not about perfection. But what I've learned over the years, especially interviewing people that I respect, is observing how they think and how they live their lives. We can own businesses. We can work at jobs. We can raise children. We can take care of ourselves. But more and more, what I am learning is about thinking for yourself and asking yourself, how do I want to feel? And what specifically would my life look like if I had the courage to live the life that I wanted to live? Would I talk differently? Would I say no? Would I put up boundaries? Would I follow through with things? If I wasn't acting from a place of fear or guilt, what would that look like? So I'm excited for you to dive into today's conversation with Elizabeth, and I want to hear from you. Send me a private message. You can either text me at 313-710-5199. Let me know what you thought of today's episode, or send me a DM on Instagram at HeatherChauvin_. And I think that's it. I look forward to hearing from you, and let's dive in. All right, welcome Elizabeth to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I can hear my son getting into mischief. He knows. It's like, are you going on a podcast interview? Because if you are, now I'm going to make a mess.
Yeah, it's time to wreak havoc in the background. I get it.
Exactly. And I don't know if it's ever the children or the dogs. And then I find out when I leave my office.
Mm-hmm.
That's life. How many kids do you have?
Like 1 million. Also
1
3
million. 1 million children.
Yes, I have 3, and they're 3, 5, and under. So it just kind of like feels like each of them is like 4 or 5 kids.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And how many? And you live on a farm-ish?
Yes, farm-ish. I'm a farmish liver, and we have like 7 chickens and a puppy. But really, we're just kind of adapting to figuring out what the heck it means to live on a property like this, because neither my husband nor I came from farmland, but we're not farmers. We're not trying to become farmers. We just love the fact that we have all this land and privacy and space for the kids to roam, and area for us to grow our own food and know where it comes from. We're just kind of learning as we go. That's just like the nature of how we do everything. Like dive in head first with cement shoes on, and then figure out how to swim.
Well, I'm a huge fan of that, because I feel like you have no other option but to figure it out. And it's this exhilarating feeling of, I wouldn't say my husband is that type by nature, but I definitely am. And he just usually goes, whatever, Like you'll figure it out. Oh, we're here again. Heather's making us do some crazy shit again. And that's the beauty of it. Like we're born and designed to survive. So why don't you just make yourself uncomfortable and go for your dreams?
I would rather have a life of, oh shit, I bit off more than I can chew, than looking back on a life of, oh wow, I tried nothing.
Amazing. So let's talk about, I'm sure it always hasn't been kitty cats, rainbows, puppies, and lots of land. So what is a part of Elizabeth's story? What's a part of your story where you were not happy? You were not satisfied with where you were in your life? What did that look like?
Yeah. So when I tried to take the easy, conventional status quo path because it was safe, or that's what I was told, it was safe. I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. Both of my parents run and own their own businesses still to this day. My grandparents were entrepreneurs. My aunts and uncles are all independent business owners. So that was what I grew up witnessing. And so my whole life, that was kind of just like what you do. And then what I noticed was the things I loved about it. I loved that my mom and dad never missed a ball game. I loved that we were always around the dinner table together. I loved all of those aspects. And I contorted that in my mind as entrepreneurship or owning your own business equals freedom. What I didn't realize was it was really not freedom, it was flexibility, because they were at all of those things and present in our lives. And we had an amazing childhood because of it. But I remember, being like 6 years old, getting up to go use the bathroom at like midnight or go get a drink of water and seeing the dining room light on and my mom's briefcase open and all of her papers strewn all over the dining room table, because she had flexibility, but she didn't have freedom because her business model had her only earning when she was working. So she had to make up for lost time when she was present with us during the day. And she set that as her priority. So she did it, but it meant paying for it later. So as I got older,
stop you there for a second, because I hear this a lot. And I believe that, this conversation that we're having, like for the women listening, you do not necessarily need to go out and start your own business. And I know a lot of people in the online space talk about business, and I'm just like, you do you. And I see this a lot. I'll even work with women who speak up at work and say, I need that flexibility, right? And sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. But there was something that you said around sacrificing. She sacrificed, I'm with the kids. It's like the dollar per hour model, right? I'm with the kids. So therefore that's taking away from additional time where I can work on my business. So then I'll just take away from sleep and transition into that. And I just think that's really important. I just wanted to bring that to light, because I still hear a lot of people going for freedom. Like that is their ultimate feeling and desire. And yet they're still in this dollar per hour, the more I work, the more I make mindset. So just wanted to say that.
I'm glad you highlighted it, because this, like, even if whoever's listening is not into business or entrepreneurship, this whole concept is going to apply to any woman's life. And like for me, seeing that, it catapulted me in a different direction for a little while, where I said, okay, well, if that's what entrepreneurship looks like, I'll go the conventional route. And I'm telling you, Heather, like 5 minutes in a cubicle and I was suffocating. I couldn't stand the fact that my worth was being dictated, how I could use my creativity was being dictated, my time was being dictated, like everything was under someone else's thumb. And I knew I just couldn't continue with that. So that was that period in my life where there was like, okay, massive catalyst, because I can't go on like this. Now I know there are plenty of people that does work really well for, and great. Like you have to find your zone of operation that you're going to be able to thrive and optimize your life within. That wasn't it for me. So that's when I did pivot towards entrepreneurship. But ironically, I built a business exactly like my parents in the beginning, where I was in that time for money model. And I couldn't ever feel fully present in anything I was doing. When I was with the kids, I was thinking about what I had to get done for work. When I was doing work, I felt guilty that I wasn't with the kids or my husband. And it just like was this vicious cycle. So I knew there had to be a better way. And that's when I pivoted into changing my business model and then ultimately teaching other people how to do the same, of get out of that space, like enough. Stop disillusioning yourself into thinking flexibility is freedom. It's not. So what can you do to create a business that supports the vision? And let me tell you what that all comes down to. It's like the ultimate question. I bet you whatever, if I asked 90% of your listeners right now, Heather, what do you actually want? Like, describe to me the vision for your life. They would start stuttering. Like, they think on a surface level, they know what they want, the same way I thought I knew what I wanted. But if they had to get granular with it and describe it and then look at life and say, wait a minute, am I actually on the path to get there? They're not. First of all, they don't even know what they want. And second of all, if they do, they haven't either, if they're in entrepreneurship, built the business that's going to support the vision or stepped into the life that's going to support the vision. They're just like going through life hoping that somehow time magically gets them to where they want to go. And it's the biggest lie that we tell ourselves as women, men, doesn't matter. Everyone does it. But it's specifically, I see it a lot in moms and women business owners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you have to create space and to physically think for yourself and ask, what do I want? And most likely you'll have to put, pen to paper and go for a car ride and sit in a parking lot and think with no distractions. But if your excuse is, I don't have time, I feel guilty, blah, 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 you're never going to give yourself, like, there's a lot of resistance that can come into play because, and I'll hear women say too, if I actually write down what I want, then I have to go for it because then I know I'm going to accomplish it. And that's the scary part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's room for failure there. But the reality is though, like, there's room for failure in every scenario. The fact that I was willing at one point in my life to suck it up and live in a life where I actually felt like I was suffocating for the next 40 years because that's what people told me was safe or felt conventional or whatever, is as big, if not 1,000 times bigger a failure than if I branch out on my own and I stumble on my way towards what I actually want. But people will always choose what feels safer, like what feels more familiar, even if what feels more familiar is literally killing them because it's conventional, it's comfortable, versus taking a step outside of that towards something that's actually going to propel you towards the life that you actually want to live, but it's unfamiliar and that's too much. Like, people cannot handle what they don't already know, what feels uncertain or what feels like it goes against the grain. And it's become like my life mission to the point where I probably repel more people than I attract sometimes because I'm so willing to speak out against that mediocrity and that victim mindset and all. It's just like, I can't, I feel like I'm doing the world an injustice if I enable that in people that I know are capable of more.
So here's I'm over here saying, yes, I get it, because that's literally what happened to me is I almost died because I was hustling. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing that no one talks about from a mainstream perspective. I started my business as a social worker, falling in love with the idea of teaching parents an alternative or outside forward-thinking way, I'm laughing already, to parent their children. And what I realized was it wasn't a different way of parenting. It was an undoing of what we needed to unlearn as adults. Your child is not broken. Their behavior does not need to be punished. They are not bad people. They're literally trying to express themselves in a world that is telling them they are bad and not acting appropriately. And so as we are trying to stick ourselves in cubicles and areas in our lives that no longer fit for us, this is what adults are doing to children. And the children are fighting back in their behavior, right? Saying, this doesn't feel good. This doesn't work for me. So as I started, when that was my lens, when I started to work with parents, it's like, listen, we need to look at you. Are you happy? Are you in alignment? Do you feel in control of your time? And they were like, oh shit, I don't want to look there because, they're reflecting back to me. So I'm curious your perspective on all of that.
Yeah, I so resonate with everything you just said, starting from the place of kids. So let's start there, because when we had our first, all my kids are like ridiculously strong-willed since the day they were born. And my son, our first, was just like next level. Like it was unbelievable. His level of his will. Like there was, how people are like, oh, we'll just wait it out or try. It's like, no, you don't understand. Like this kid could like scream it for 6 hours if he wanted to.
Yeah.
So I remember talking to my husband's grandmother, who was in counseling for years, and she's in her 90s and she's still like sharp as a tack, and she has so much wisdom all bundled up in her that I'm always trying to get out. And I remember just saying to her, like, man, this is so tough. I'm like trying to get him to lighten up, and I'm trying to get him to, stop being so intense about certain things and whatever. And he was like little, he was, under 1 year old. And she said, Elizabeth, do you understand that like those things in him that you see are going to be some of his greatest strengths when he gets older? And if you spend all this time when he's young trying to stop it or change it or temper it, you're actually beating down one of his greatest strengths. And I was in tears because it was just this moment as a mom where I just like total perspective change, saw it from a totally different vantage point of like, oh my gosh, instead of trying to harness this good in him and work with it, I am trying to come up in my mind all the different ways that I can combat it so that it's more convenient for me. And it's like,
say that last part again.
Yep. So like I was coming up with all the ways as a parent, because we do this, right? Of how can I combat this or change this in my child so that it's more convenient for me? It's hard as a mom to have to deal with a more, strong-willed kid. But now he's 5, and I already can see how it's one of his brightest, most beautiful shining lights. And oh my gosh, I still get emotional thinking about I could have squashed that in him without, and I'm not a bad person. I'm such a loving mom. We do this all the time. It's not that like we have to be this abusive, terrorizing parent to do these kind of things. We can be the most loving, nurturing people and still like try and shave down the sharp edges of our children when those are really like how they're going to break through to become the best possible version of them. No, I'm not saying like let your kid be a tyrant and let them do whatever they want, but I am saying how can you work with those strengths the same way a kid when they're a little older comes home with a report card and they're, like an A+, an A, a B, another B, and then a D. Where does our focus immediately go? To the D. It's like, why are you failing here? Like, what's going wrong? Like, we need to put more focus here. You need to pay more attention instead of looking at the A+ and saying, man, let's nurture these strengths and figure out, no, I'm not necessarily going to accept the D forever, but I want to put more of my energy into cultivating the A+ and letting you run with that.
Yeah. And when you begin to kind of dissect how we live, it is that. It's like, let's just put you in a box. And no one ever asks what works for you, what works for your child. I see like a very slow movement. And a lot of it is unconventional. But okay, so then what happened? Then obviously you are an advocate of taking care of your health.
Yeah.
And I am too. And I am just all about helping women thrive and feel alive and feel good, which apparently is a foreign concept. So what do you notice is the number one thing that your clients resist? Like coming in, they know they need it, but the resistance to actually transform that piece of their lives and business.
Such a good point. Question. So the thing that's coming to mind is, speaking of health. So like, this is a major pillar for me. I don't care if I'm teaching a multi-million-dollar earner how to earn more passive income in their business. We're foundationally at some point early in the process going to talk about optimizing their body, their gut, their brain, because that's how I can help them perform at the highest level. That's how I can help a mom be present and calm and entirely loving to their children through stressful times. Is if your body's, you know this, Heather, like if your body is like totally resisting you and you're not doing the things to help it operate at a high level, that's going to bleed into every area of your life. You think you're not, more like rude and whatever to your husband when you feel like crap and you're stressed and your like blood pressure feels like it's going to blow. So speaking of that health piece, what I found is, again, going back to that, like what's familiar, getting people to embrace the fact that, first of all, these things are completely intertwined. Like you can't have one without the other. For me, it's, mentoring entrepreneurs. So it's like, yeah, I know you want this big, amazing business that's thriving, but you can't have that if you can't have whatever your highest version of body and health optimization, mind optimization is. It's different for different people based on whatever they're facing. And it's getting people to see that there's a correlation there and to get them outside of their, how they get fed by whatever is mainstream. Yeah, but I saw on the news this, or yeah, but I read this article and it said this about, fats are bad or this or that. It's like getting them out of that and actually looking at what is going to get you into the best mental and body state that we can get you in before we try and optimize business or whatever else, your schedule and so forth. And it's funny because in the most simplified example, I work with a lot of moms too. And they'll ask questions about like what I feed my kids. And I'll talk about, the dangers of processed foods or how our food system in America specifically is so corrupt, and pesticides and different things like this are leading to disease and different conditions and altered mind states and all these different things. And I'll they'll say, oh, well, what's your favorite thing to feed your kids? And I'll just like give them a smoothie recipe. And they will respond being like, yeah, but how do you know like too much spinach isn't bad? Or how do you know that like too much vitamin D isn't bad? And they are literally feeding their kids McDonald's. That is straight up poison.
Yeah.
But they're so conditioned, they see it every day on commercials, on the signs or whatever. Their comfort level is, I would rather feed my kid a poison that I'm familiar with because the world told me it's safe than feed them like this pure natural health because it's so foreign to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that at I don't even know if I'm answering your question, but I had to go off on this like tirade because it's so, to me, that's so fundamental, is like break down the walls, stop trying to get your information from unreliable sources, and learn to be a critical thinker that can look at every situation, health, business, parenting, marriage, ask questions. Like if something doesn't seem right, it's because it's not right. Find what works for you and be willing to break down the mainstreams or the norms that you've been fed your whole life to step into the next version of you. And that next version of you is not going to come because you saw something on the news and then like stuck with it, or saw an advertisement that this company uses natural flavors, so it must be safe. Like, no, you have to do your own digging and in every category of life so that you can break through to that next version, elevated version of you.
I love this conversation. And what I just kept hearing the whole time was like, think for yourself. Like, and that goes back to the beginning of what we were talking about. Like, what do you want? Not what do you think the world wants from you?
Right.
And I reflect on my own motherhood journey, because I will say time and time again, parenting is a leadership role. I have no idea why that statement is groundbreaking. Parenting has been around since mankind has, been on this planet. Like, every child, I mean, I'm not getting religious or anything, but every human, had a sperm and an egg. And someone had to raise the baby. So my point, before I go on this weird side note of, I don't know where the fuck that conversation is going, but my point is parenting is a leadership role. And if the leader is falling apart, the whole ecosystem is not going to survive. And it's just not, there's going to be lots of trauma. There's going to be all this shit. So you and I are here, just some rando ladies in a whole sea of, we have a lot to work up against, where it's like, no, you can have your cake and eat it too. You can feel good. You don't have to do it all. And there is no perfect way to do it. But actually, if you consider your needs and how you feel, and you and I work very differently, right? We're not teaching the exact same things, but it's the same message. Like, you can feel good. And the better you feel, the more you're going to have in your life and the bigger impact you're going to make. But you got to think for yourself. So tell me some of the, I kind of just asked you this, the pushback, but what you notice. I always ask some people this who are like committed to living this life. Do you ever feel alone on this journey?
Yes and no. Okay, so I have it certainly at different points. And so much of that, the answer to that question comes down to my mindset in that day, right? So like if I'm allowing the negativity to creep in and I'm kind of playing into the victim mindset of like, let's say I get pushed back on something I share, like trying to push people to think critically, or people don't share my opinion and they say hateful things from behind their computer screen, whatever people do, it, trolls come out. If I'm in a state where I'm like impermeable to that because I'm elevated, right? Like I see past that moment to where I'm going and my mission behind it.
Right.
I don't feel so alone because I'm like, I'm strong. I've got my husband in my corner. I have a really strong faith. So I feel like I've got God's got my back. Like there are just a lot of things that I can focus on the good. But if I'm in a state where, and this definitely happens to me, I'm certainly human with this, where I'm like just hearing it too much and I'm focused too much in this moment versus where I'm going and my mission behind it, I feel totally alone. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, maybe I should tone down who I am, or maybe I should be a little bit more PC, or maybe like, I should play into this bullshit narrative that like, man, I shouldn't offend anybody. Like I shouldn't speak any truth because it might offend somebody. So I'll keep super neutral on everything. And then maybe everybody will like me. And I play into that. Then I do feel alone. So it's really so dependent on what I'm willing to do to like raise up above that and keep my eyes on the prize. Like I always say to my clients that I'm working with and my mastermind members, it's like, you have to have a vision so strong that you are in the day-to-day sucks going towards a vision. FYI, like you are going to experience so much hardship in pursuit of something amazing, obviously, because what do you think? You're going to be handed the silver platter with the life of your dreams? Like, no, you got to work your ass off for it. So in knowing that I'm going to hit roadblocks, detours, brick walls that I didn't expect, haters coming out, like people, arguments along the way, whatever it might be, my vision has to be so clear and in focus at all times that I don't get caught up in the day-to-day minutia because my eyes are up just enough to always keep sight of my vision, and it keeps me going. If I'm head down, grinding every day, or in motherhood every day, or looking at the state of my countertops and it's like overwhelming of how much crap is there and I haven't organized yet or whatever, like if I'm in the minutia and I allow myself to think so short-sighted and not keep my eyes up towards that vision, or my vision isn't crystal clear, like I know I kind of want a better life and I want more freedom and this and that, but I'm not like crystal clear on what I want and why I'm going for it. I'm slogging through every day. It is so hard. And that's why I think more people do step in and lean more towards that mediocrity, because it is easier. If you're not rocking the boat, if you're not going for anything like monumental in your life, if you're not trying to leave your mark or raise like the next level, leaders, the next generation of leaders, it is so much easier. Heck yeah, you watch your like reality TV shows and it's nice and it's like comfortable. And then, you have just enough money to pay your bills and your marriage is fine. Nobody's cheating. Nothing's terrible. Your kids are not like, terrors in society. They're doing okay. That's so much safer. And it's so much less scary, but it also is not what I want. And what I want.
But that scares me. And
what part?
what
the mediocrity
reality that you just created. I was like, fuck no. That's
right.
like, that would be like, Heather, you have to go work in a cubicle 9 to 5 starting tomorrow. Like that scares me.
Yeah, that's like purgatory to me, because I lived it for a short period of time of that status quo, like come home, watch TV, eat what I want, foods that make me feel good mentally because, you know, they trigger something in my brain that tells me this is comfortable, go to the job that I know when my paycheck is coming. I also think different people thrive in different environments. Like I have people in my family a couple people that are in the corporate environment and they are kicking ass. Like they are amazing versions of themselves. They elevate, they get the promotions, they work really hard, they have the family life. So I'm also not trying to blanket everyone with like go for entrepreneurship, because I think that's a big reason why so many people are failing in entrepreneurship is it's not necessarily the right thing. But it is about having a vision and a mission in your life.
Yeah.
And if you don't, no matter what vehicle you decide to ride in to get there, that's to me irrelevant as much as, are you crystal clear on that vision? Are you willing to do whatever it takes to get to that vision? And that way you can survive the struggles that are bound to happen in pursuit of it.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, we need people who are lit up like Christmas trees inside of corporate, and we need it everywhere in society. And I also believe not everybody has obviously not everyone has the same mission or vision. And if you listen to what was implanted inside of you, that's purpose. Like that is what you were supposed to do on this earth at this time. And people are chronically saying, you know, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? And it's like, well, what do you enjoy? Like, why do you think somebody outside of you is going to be able to tell you what your purpose is? They can co-create and help you find it and reflect back to you. But you have to be willing to like look within and say, what do I like? What do I enjoy? What lights me up? What do I really, really want? And let it be messy on your way there.
Absolutely. Yep.
So Elizabeth, what do you want to be known for? Like at the end of the day, how reflecting back and how, you know, what you said about seeing your mom just work so hard. How do you want your children to remember you?
You know, it's funny when you were asking that, that's all I could picture is how my children would remember me, not how my, you know, podcast listeners would remember me or how the people who are in my mat, like I care about that. I want to make my impact, but at my core, just like immediately without thinking, reacting to that question, it really is about my kids. Because for me, I just have this overwhelming feeling that so much of my purpose, and I'm sure other moms can resonate with this, is in how, like the tools I give them to become the people that they're called to be. And it's bigger than me. But the way that I'm going to do that is not by what I tell them, but by what I do. And that's why I have a mission that is also about what I do in the day-to-day and what I do for the big picture beyond just motherhood, because that's how I'm going to show them like how to blaze a trail. Not necessarily that they have to take my path. They can go create their own if they want to, but I have to be willing to lead by that example. So for me, so much of it and so much of what I teach to the people that I do mentor too, it's about, here's one of my missions is I want more people to be able to be around the dinner table with their kids, raising up that next generation of leaders, truly present, not feeling pulled in other directions without having to pay for it at midnight with their papers all over the dining room table. So I'm helping them build businesses that allow them to do that. And I think that is like such a big part of my call and what I do. And it also will affect my children. So I just feel like we need that leadership. We need critical thinkers. We need people who can be independent of like the machine and what they're fed, and be able to use their brain independently and look at things critically and say, wait a minute, does this make sense? Or should this be done a different way? Or could this be better? Because there are so many things in our society that are just on autopilot. like, because that's what we've been taught for generations. It's why we thought fat was bad for like 50 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's just what we were told. Like from one completely manipulated study decades ago that went into the news channels and whatever, we were fed that once, and it lived on for decades that we believed that lie.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just, and until someone said like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense though. Look what happens in the body when we eat healthy fats. And it's like everything changed. It was a perspective shift. I want more people doing that with everything.
Mm-hmm.
Business, parenting, marriage. Like, no, it doesn't have to be this way. No, it doesn't have to go the way that society said or the majority is operating. I think there's a better way, and I'm going to have the courage to go after that in whatever capacity that is for each person.
I love it. And just looking back at who I was as a child, misunderstood, considered a rebel, questioning everything in school. I was told, like, you're stupid. Just tell us what, just follow the rules, Heather. And then look where I am now,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm literally like, why do you do that? Does that make sense? Why would, like, look at the ROI you're getting from taking this action. That's not in alignment.
Right.
It just blows my mind to be freedom to think for yourself, freedom to act for yourself, and often asking people, if you knew you couldn't fail, what would you be doing? And the things that come out are often so far removed from who they are today. It's like, just start taking action in the direction that is going to fuel your soul.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's in integrity with, there's such a difference between like values and virtues to me. Like people will say here's my example. When I was working in corporate, if you asked me what I valued, I'd say family and freedom and health. I was 60 pounds overweight and ate like shit. I never saw my family because I was working all the time. And on the weekends, I wanted to go out partying with my friends. Like I used to say faith was a value, but I wasn't even going to church on the weekends, and I wasn't practicing my faith. Like I was spewing all the things that I thought were good values to have, but I wasn't living them. But like your virtues, those are taking your values and putting them into action. And are you building a life that is conducive to that or not? Like, are you actually living these things? Are you just lip service about the things that you think sound nice, that you would like to be remembered for, even though if you were to like break down your life, why would you ever be remembered for those things? You didn't live out any of them. You didn't stand for any of them. You didn't have a backbone in any of them because it was easier to be a bag of mush because that was the direction the world was going. And you're not known for those things just because you say you like them. So how can you put your values into action? How can you live with integrity every day? Even if that's as a mother in the walls of your own home, not even going outside of your own home, you can make that impact. Like you said, it is ultimate leadership. You are literally raising up the next generation of people who are going to go on to do good, bad, and different. So it's not about like how many people you're reaching or how big of a business you're building or how much money you're making. Are you in congruence with who you say you care to be? And are you ensuring that each day of your life is contributing to that? Yeah, we have off days. We're not perfect every day. There are plenty of days that I'm not in alignment with those values or virtues, but how can I do more to ensure that I'm willing to live, like be value in action?
Yeah. We can dust ourselves off and, just keep moving forward. And the interesting part about what, this whole conversation is, it's consistency, it's intentional action. It will feel incredibly uncomfortable sometimes, but what is the alternative?
Yes.
The alternative is like death, soul death. Like, why do people want that? So what I'm walking away from this conversation is the importance of critical thinking and thinking for yourself and asking yourself those uncomfortable questions. Like, what do you want? What does that look like for you? And maybe, it's a slap in the face for people to go, dang, I am not living in integrity. So Elizabeth, where can people find more of your amazingness and what are you up to?
Well, I am always over on my website, Elizabeth Hartke, that's HARTKE.com. And also my podcast, Scaling Up. And we talk about a lot of these principles, both in entrepreneurship, motherhood, health, just so many of the things that are the necessary conversations we should be having. And I actually, the more we talk, Heather, I have this thing I created for a lot of my clients that I'm happy to share for free with your audience. Is called the Future Forecast Formula. And it kind of helps you through this process that we're talking about, getting crystal clear on that vision of where you want to go, how you want to get there, why it's important that you do it, what you're willing to do to get there, what are those values that are important to you. So I'm happy to share that with you and your audience so that they can put that into motion if it can help them. And I'm always over on Instagram too, at Eliz Hartke, and I love chatting with critical thinkers and people who are willing to do the work to step into that. So please don't be shy. Reach out.
I love it. And do you have a URL for that freebie?
Yeah, I do. I'm going to send it to you because I don't know if I know it off the top of my head.
Awesome. And we'll put that in the show notes for everybody. Thank you, Elizabeth. This has been an amazing conversation.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.